if I can get out and keep the gunfight, moving and use the car as a barrier, it's going to suck up those rounds, and then I can get around, then I can start to put rounds on target. It's better for me.
And you hit her with a car. And my first thought is, yeah.
America.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I'm standing there covering down on a dude. Guess what? I'm the dude with a gun.
Yeah, there are a bunch of hammers looking for a nail.
That's it.
Yeah.
If you're being serious about wanting to carry a gun and or shooting to get better, you should be in the practical shooting side of the house. Mm-hmm. They do it the best.
Put the tourniquet on immediately. There was blood everywhere, fingers hanging off. She associates that noise with me getting shot.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Higher Caliber Podcast. Today we have Don again. He's a lost co-host. We got Tim, as always, sometimes. And we got our good friend Dustin Mowery back in the studio. It's been a year, so welcome back, buddy.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on.
Seeing you guys. Yeah.
It's like almost exactly a year.
It's been almost exactly a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good
So,
timings. How was retirement, man?
Retirement is awesome. So I retired October of 24. So 27 years in, it's a different experience for sure. I got a piece of advice back in January of this year from a guy that I used to work with. I called him out of the blue, just kind of checking on him, see how he's doing. And told him I was going to retire later in 24 and asked, hey, do you have any advice? And he said, yeah, take the next year to start to step away.
Mm. Is that like quiet quitting?
Yeah, not quiet quitting, but so I was involved in so many different things with the department. So I was on our ordnance team, our firearms unit. I was already off the defensive tactics team, but I was involved in our SWAT team, doing active shooter training and doing all these different things for the department. But he's like, hey, you need to take the next year and just kind of step away, back away, mentally back away. He said, because he's a nice guy. I won't mention his name, but he rage quit and rage retired. So he didn't want to retire when he did, but he made the decision in like April. I think it was in like 20 or 21. He made the decision in April and was gone by June 1st. So he didn't have a long transition time, you know what I mean? For our job specifically, being a law enforcement or whatever. So, he didn't get that opportunity, and it affected him. Honestly, it did. He didn't have the time to kind of process and understand that on his last day of being in uniform, like
that was it.
He's going to walk in the door as a police officer and then turn all of his stuff in and then walk out later that day and it be over.
So he had a little regret from that.
He did. Yeah, he did. He had a little bit of an issue from it and some regrets. And he's like, dude, just do it this way. And honestly, that's been really, really good for him. Or the good advice, I guess, for me. I was off. My wife had an injury from her job as well. And so I was off for 4 weeks. Then I took a 2-week vacation and went out of the country and did some stuff and came back. So I was gone for 6 weeks, September, October timeframe. So it was really nice, man. Just kind of chill out a little bit, but
unwind a bit.
Yeah. But it's been great. I'm enjoying it. It's been almost 6 weeks now, 5.5 weeks, almost 6 weeks. So
what was now you said you took you were off, but at work, what was the process like? Did you have to change your attitude or did you change your attitude around people at all? Because I could see, and I don't know you that well, but say you're at work and you're you're a go-getter at work. Did you have to pull yourself back? Maybe not do some of the things that you did before or?
No, great question. I did a little bit. But there's that fine line of pulling back so far to where you're not being safe.
Right. You don't want to be complacent.
Right. And then get hurt or get killed or because you've heard of that. You know what I mean? Guys are 60, 90 days out. Then, you're like, yeah, he's made it. He's going to retire. And then he gets.
Yeah. They're just checked out.
Right. Completely. And I didn't want to do that. So I kept on the gas, if you will, per se, kept on the gas of making sure that I was safe on shift and other guys were being safe and smart. But I also had to kind of pull away and just stand back a little bit and watch and make, and try not to get as involved in things. Because again, the last thing I want is a subpoena for me to have to go to court in 6 months. Cause it'll be like, I don't even know who you're talking about. I won't be there. You're
right.
Did you try to raise anybody else up around you, to maybe kind of fill your shoes?
Yeah. So our department is really good about that. We so we're on our ordnance team. It's our firearms unit. We had one newer guy, Doug, younger dude, came onto the job, really smart guy. He was the one that was chosen by all of us on the team to kind of start to take over. And so I just started giving him a lot of information, a lot of conversations when we would be on the range and letting, like when guys were shooting the iteration, going through the reps or whatever, he and I would step back and I'm like, all right, this is what we're looking for. When I'm explaining this, these are the things that you may see or more than likely you're going to see. So I started building him up a little bit. And then we had another guy that we brought on, Josh, who's also a younger guy, really smart as well, very eager. So I started to try to pass on information to him. The issue with Josh was, and no fault of his own, it was at that point, it was this past summer. So I was really a short timer. Mm-hmm. So I had to give a bunch of information to Doug, but also then still try to give some information to Josh. So we were trying to build those guys up, especially Doug, because he's been on the ordnance team for the last 2 or 3 years now. So we knew that a lot of us, there are 3 of us on the team that are very much short timers. Myself and Adam and one of the other guys, he's retiring. I think he has 2 days left of work
something
today
like that.
and Monday, and then he's done. So he's retiring. And then one of the other guys, Jason, is only got a few years left, but he's an older guy. So yeah, definitely we tried to do that and bring guys up and show them. And even on our SWAT team, we were doing the same thing. So trying to build these younger guys, because we know eventually we're all going to retire. We all have to retire. So you can't do it forever. Like in here, you can, in your heart, you're like, I can do this. I can do 30 more years.
And I think being there, seeing it going on, guys, we'd go to the range and we'd see it was really good because it wasn't like all of a sudden you're gone and now we've got this new younger guy that we're just supposed to believe, okay, yeah, he knows what he's doing. It was a real good transition of we could see that, okay, they chose these guys, they picked them. They've got their support. They're showing them what needs to be done. And so it made it a lot easier for those of us that are still there to have that trust and everything built with them. Because, for guys like me, Doug's 15?
It seems like it is.
He looks so young.
Yeah.
But then you just sit back and listen to him. Like I did a 2-day rifle where it was I think it was one of his first times where they were really, truly teaching it. And they both did a fantastic job.
They crushed it.
It was a great day, great time, learned really good stuff. They did a great job explaining everything. And so, but I think part of that was it had already been kind of shown to us that, you can trust these guys to know what they're talking about.
Yeah. And I think we also did that because of and this started on SRT, but also it kind of transitioned to the DT team and to the ordnance team was we don't want to just pick a person to fill a spot and just be like, okay, cool. This guy's up. He's been here for the longest and, the seniority, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
You guys know how that works.
For sure.
But we took our time on SRT and even on our ordnance team to we want to pick the right guys to make sure okay, this guy's got a good heart for this. He's willing and able to learn, because back in the day when I started in the mid 90s, it was, he likes to shoot.
Right.
And that doesn't work out.
Right.
He may be a fantastic shooter. And I've been to classes like that where the guy's a fantastic shooter, but
can't teach for shit.
Oh, you're just
can't relay the information.
Right. And you're like, dude, you watch him do the demo and you're like, holy shit, this guy's he's a hammer on a pistol. Okay, now turn around and teach that at the class.
Right.
Okay, grab gun, point, and pull trigger. You're
that's why most boxing coaches were never famous boxers.
Yes.
It's the people that can relay the information you need because you can box, I don't want to break up Mike Tyson or whatever, but you can be the best boxer ever, but if you can't get that out of your head and relay it, then there's really no point in teaching
Absolutely.
anybody.
And how many other things do you see that in? You know what I mean? Like football.
Everything.
Yeah. Football coaches, you know what I mean? Not all these guys were pro athletes, won the Heisman Trophy, got the kiss of death from winning that or,
sure.
You know what I mean? They didn't, but they were phenomenal at breaking things down and being able to coach. So so we did I think we did a pretty good job, and it's good to see that the outside guys are seeing that as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And again too, it's these guys don't have an inflated ego because of it either.
Right.
Like you don't show up to stuff and they're like, all right, those guys are gone. We're the new top dog.
Right.
It's like they're still the same approachable guys. I don't work with them every day, but when I show up to training and stuff, it's just like I was working with them last Tuesday. I mean, they've done a really good job of, you got the position because we chose you because of all these factors that came into place.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So yeah, just trying to do that. And, but then other day-to-day stuff, man, it's like, I look at it every night's Friday night. You know what I mean? You can go out and go to dinner or do whatever. And then, but every morning you get up, it's like Monday morning, like going and working out and you know what I mean? Starting to eat better and working out again and taking care of yourself physically and whatnot is really taking a big priority to take all the stuff that we did on the job. And I'm like, okay, how do I take that energy? Where am I dumping it into? I'm putting it into working out. I'm putting it into, my company now, and trying to build that reputation and get out there and say, hey, I'm teaching this and here we go, so, which it seems like it's kind of paying off. I'm getting some phone calls and guys want to do some stuff. So
you want to talk about your company a little bit?
Yeah. So, it's a crazy easy name. It's maybe difficult to remember, but it's Mowery Tactical Concepts. So it's super difficult.
MTC?
MTC. Yeah. It's
Nice.
MTC. Yep. So,
I
MTC
could figure that
is
out.
yeah. Good job. I'm so proud. So proud. I told you it would be difficult.
I
right?
hope down here in a minute.
Yeah. So, but MTC, so, we're doing performance pistol, performance carbine stuff. We're doing a 3-day active shooter class. And that builds off of, we'll go to the range the first day. It's all pistol. We're not doing any rifle stuff because most patrol guys get there and they're going at it with pistols. So we'll do a live fire range day on day 1, and then day 2 and day 3 starts with a solo guy showing up because that's what happens the vast majority of the time. But we go all the way through the whole process in a couple of days of even to the commander level or the guy that's standing outside trying to run this whole thing, situation. And Don's seen a lot of this because we kind of developed a lot of the things that we do from work at the department. So, and then active shooter. And then I originally started or came on to the training scene, I guess, with a vehicle class. So I have a class. It's an instructor level class. It's 4 days. It's called high risk vehicle engagements. It's an instructor level class. I used to run a 2-day version of that. But it was super compressed, and really what guys wanted was the instructor level of that class. It's a pretty intense class. Myself and my buddy Jim Hardman, we both teach the class, and it's pretty intense because we're pushing guys and making guys teach. But in that class, they are teaching by 10, 11 o'clock on day 1 in the morning. So we're having them teach very quickly, like the material, teaching it back of like, what's your understanding of this and why are we doing what we're doing? And
so you're not just giving them advanced knowledge, you're actually making them teach back.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And because again, that's the problem. I wrote the class originally as a class. If I was going to be a student in the class, if I was going to be a student, what would I want that class to look like? So that's the angle that I came from it. And started saying, okay, putting the information in. And this was a process. I mean, it was 6-8 months, maybe a little bit longer of writing the class. And then we would teach it a little bit. This is in 2017. And then we would take things out and be like, nope, I didn't like the flow of that. Or we had, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Just refine it.
Yeah. Just kind of refine it and keep going. And the one thing that we kept getting a lot of feedback on was the amount of teaching that we were allowing the students to do. The other instructors from other departments were really, really liking that. And we got some good contracts. We had some good stuff. We still do. We still have some good contracts. We've been through some bigger agencies and changed the thought process on how to do some traffic stops and understanding how to set cars up for high risk or felony stops and stuff like that. So we've been pretty successful with that. So then we have some firearms instructor development stuff, which is again 3 days. And but again, that teach back and showing guys the right way of how to train themselves, but also how to train others, which again, we did so much with the new guys that came on our ordnance team. So I saw the success of that. And then I started to put that into these classes as well. So, yeah.
Does it seem hard to mitigate risk for live fire in the car? Does it bring a whole new level, or are you essentially just?
It does. Cause I mean, think about this. I'm showing up. I was at a pretty large department this past summer down south. And, I'm showing up with guys. There's 18 guys in this class I know nothing about. I know one guy there, sort of, only over Instagram that we've talked, and he's called and we went back and forth on it. But I don't know anything about how these guys shoot, what their thought process or whatever. So we do kind of a crawl, walk, run concept. But that's why, like Jim and I are ultimately the ultimate safeties. But we tell everybody in class, we're like, listen, you are a safety officer. If you see something that you do not agree with, you think is unsafe, just be like, the code word, the safe word for the day is stop. And then everybody stops. I give them an example. I'm like, hey, if you got a guy back here and he's watching and you're shooting and somebody yells stop, finger goes off the trigger, gun stays straight facing downrange. And we give those parameters of where downrange is, what's the left berm, the right berm. But there's a lot of things going on. I mean, we're facing uprange with live fire guns in your hand. So guys have to stay switched on. But we do a lot of crawl, walk, run. We're like a lot of dry practice, a lot of dry runs or dry fire runs through this. And that's the other part of the class, right? Is because, your department, right? You're like, okay, I'm going to take this back to my agency. We all have those people in your agency that you're like, I cannot do this with Tommy because he's not going to be able to handle this. Okay, well, how do we still teach Tommy? You get the material across, but maybe he's not doing the live fire run.
Without throwing him right in.
Yeah, without throwing him into the deep end and teaching him how to swim, or how do we give him the information and let him go through everything without him injuring somebody or himself. Yeah. So we go through a lot of this about mitigation of issues. And we encourage this, like that class specifically, like I tell them on day one, because we start in a classroom each day, at 8:00, I'm like, this is your training. Like, this is I can stand up here and talk all day. This, it's what you're paying me for, but like, you're going to get the information. So whatever you want to know, just ask the question. Now we've had guys come up with great questions but I'm like, don't know.
Which helps your class in the long run.
Yes. Which helps build the
and
class
other people down the line.
Yeah. So we've had some really, really good questions and some safety things that have come up where guys have called stop. And I'm like, okay, you called stop where everybody's safe. Okay. Why did you call stop? And they're like, well, from this position, they're standing 30 feet back behind us, off to their right side. It looked like he was muzzling this guy. And I'm like, okay, we'll come up here. And then we kind of talk about like, all right, from that vantage point, it looked like this, but here it was. And we'll have like two safeties, one on each guy. We play what we call zone. We play zone defense. We don't play man-to-man because it gets too confusing. And we go through a lot of safety. Like there's a huge amount of safety that we build into it, so we don't have those issues. But they're also learning those things because, again, in law enforcement, right, and Don knows this for years, we just did flat range training. We're standing on a range side by side. And it was like, there's targets, we shoot targets, we do a great job. Well, that's not how gunfights happen. I mean, you can watch video after video and you can see that's not what's happening, So this class is extremely dynamic and there's a lot of moving parts. And once you kind of lay the groundwork of the safety side of things, they start to see like, oh, okay, this is actually doable. Yeah, absolutely. And we also tell them this in the class. We're like, listen, for the next 4 days, we're going to allow you to adult, but we won't let you go full dumbass. And everybody's like, oh, and I'm like, no Leroy Jenkins. Yeah. Right. And everybody kind of laughs, right? Because everybody's seen that video. Yeah. Right. Actually, we did have a guy in class this past summer who's like, what are you talking about? Yeah.
There are some.
I'm like, how have you not seen Leroy Jenkins? I mean, of course, we had to take a 5-minute break in the class. Be like, somebody pull that up on your phone.
This is important for the rest of the class.
Yeah.
And having gone through that condensed 2-day with the vehicle, I mean, it's a crazy 2 days because there are points where you start out seated in the car, buckled, looking at all these targets in front of you.
Yeah.
And depending upon what target is called, you have to make that decision. Okay, am I shooting through a windshield or am I getting out and finding cover?
Yeah.
And so again, it's not that flat range. Everybody's going to be shooting from this position at this target. And, it kind of, you do have to trust each other and you have to build that trust. But the crazy part about it too is how many people go to these classes having never even thought about what would I do to pull a gun while I'm sitting in a car?
Right.
and that's, again, in law enforcement, that happens. You know, it happens way more than it should, or
that's what I was going to ask after watching, because I've said this multiple times on this podcast, but watching police activity YouTube channels, like my favorite thing to watch.
Yeah.
I feel like dudes shoot through car windshields way more than they should when they could have simply gotten out of the car. Was no threat, immediate threat, but they knew they were going to draw their gun. They're like, pop, pop. Now I'm going to get out of my car.
Right.
Yeah. And I think when that happens, I always sit back and think, have they ever done that before? Do they understand the weird ballistics behind glass and what's going on? And they're not wearing unless they just happen to have sunglasses or they wear glasses.
You're getting hit with glass.
Yeah, I shot through the windshield in our class, and I was wearing, and you could just feel the mist of glass come all over your face.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that happens, kind of to go back to your question of, that happens because guys have either seen it on YouTube or the grams.
Yeah.
And they think it looks really cool. So I'm going to do this for the gram because they know it's going to be on their BWC. And they're like, hold my beer, check this out. And and you're like, I could have just gotten out of the car. Right. They don't understand the barriers that they're about to shoot through or that they are shooting through is going to affect the projectile in a couple of different ways. And I've had guys in class who are like, and we ask the question, how many guys have ever shoot through auto glass sitting in a car, yada, yada. And we have guys that are like, oh, I've never done it, but I've always wanted to. And I'm like, okay, well, there's a time and place for that, and it's not, and I say this, it's not like ketchup. It doesn't go on everything. You know what I mean? Right. And they're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, not every situation is going to, or should be answered with shooting through the auto glass. There may be a better time for you, or it could be better for you to be like, I'm unassing this car. I'm moving to a different position because it's going to give me an advantage here in about 15 seconds or 30 seconds down the road. I can be able to maneuver, and be like, oh, here we go. And then we're up on target. We're doing our thing because I'm mobile. You know what I mean? We tell people all the time in that class too, we're like, that car is your chariot or your coffin. You know what I mean? And if I can get out and keep the gunfight, moving and use the car as a barrier, it's going to suck up those rounds, and then I can get around, then I can start to put rounds on target. It's better for me. Shooting around the vehicle is way better than shooting through the car. You know what I mean? Because it just does so many different things to those bullets. Yeah. So, that's the long and the short with my company.
I do have a question.
Yeah, man.
Have you guys ever taught, or do you guys ever teach to just use the car as the weapon?
Yeah. Well,
again, the ketchup scenario.
Yeah. Yeah. And we do talk about that in classes.
If I'm in my car, and I've never been in a gunfight, but if some person is stepping out and I'm still in my car and I'm just going to run them the fuck over.
So again, that turns into like a situational thing of like, and you've seen this on police activity, right? To where I remember there was one, this was probably 2, 3, maybe a little bit longer 4 years ago, where, it was a suspect was running from an officer and turning and shooting, one-handed, doing the whole thing. And the officer just comes running up and, and just runs her over.
Right.
It was all open. Everything was there. If he missed the suspect, the officer could continue to drive away.
Yeah. Was that the female in Oklahoma?
Yeah. Yes.
Well, that one too, it was an elementary school that was behind her.
Correct.
So then that throws in are you wanting to throw rounds towards an elementary building too? Right.
Well, and all this goes very fast,
This is nanoseconds. Yeah. So,
I was just wondering if that is also taught as like an acceptable thing, because as long, if that's the best case scenario versus, okay, I have to stop my car and I have to get out and then, put rounds downrange, or, hey, we're just going to end this right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because people go back to their training. I guess for sure. What I'm saying.
But the other thing is, and you hate to throw this out there, but it's true. It's honesty, right? Is like the issue at times is the perception.
Sure.
Meaning, okay, I'm okay with you shooting this person and putting the person down,
but not mangling them with your car.
Mangling them with my car.
Yeah, I get that.
Oh my God, that looks really bad. And I'm like, hold on a second. I just want to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying. So I could use lethal force.
Right.
And in our policy, it said, when we're at least lethal force, we can use anything to commit that lethal force action.
Right.
So the use of a car made it safer for the officer, and he was able to put the person
But is
Why
that
are-
defense attorney always in the back of your head? Like
Well,
what?
They're going to
It
try
is.
to, they're
is.
going to try
Yeah.
to gig you on anything you do.
100%.
Correct.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, even that one in Oklahoma, I remember there were lawsuits coming against that guy because how dare you? She was just this poor, helpless female who was
Of
running,
course.
who was
Yes.
running away and pointing a gun behind her and popping off
And
rounds.
shooting. Yes.
Yeah, and that, I mean, and they're like, and you hit her with a car, and my first thought is, yeah,
America.
Yeah. Right.
you know, I mean,
Yeah.
but at the same time, it's really hard to train that so you get those repetitions.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier, I guess, to train at a range and shooting your gun and
Yeah.
getting out of the car. It's kind of hard to be like, okay, in this scenario, we're going to have the mannequin and you're going to run her over with the car.
Right.
Right.
You know, so,
Yeah.
but I mean, it's acceptable.
Mhm.
Right.
Whether or not it happens
I
a
was just
ton, it's just
curious.
acceptable.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Just
it does
putting
happen
it-
for sure.
Putting in the back of your mind for later, just in
Yes.
case.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm not a cop. I'm going to do whatever the hell I got to do.
Yeah.
Run him over with a medic.
I'm just gonna get off the X and leave.
Yes. Yes.
'Cause-
Yeah. As a civilian, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. So,
Well, yeah.
so yeah, that's kind of the training space for me. And just, like I said, trying to put stuff out there and get things, going a little bit, and we'll see
And
how it goes.
are you still just doing LE only offerings?
Right now, yes, but I do have, I've had a couple guys ask about, hey, would you do civilian classes? I would do a civilian shooting class with no problem, pistol or carbine. And I know this is going to maybe, bother some people that listen to it or whatever, but I don't think civilians need to learn how to gunfight in and around cars. I don't think civilians need to necessarily learn how to get involved in active shooter situations. I think what you just said is like, hey, I'm just going to get off the X and I'm going to leave.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Like me now, carrying a gun, I'm no longer a full-time police officer. Like, yeah, I carry a gun still. However, if it starts, I'm going to be like, all right, let's go. It's time to go.
Mm.
Well, shooting, I'm going to run this way
Mhm.
because I don't need to do that. And even as an off-duty officer,
Yeah.
like, I know the boys in blue are going to be here, but like, how much do I want to get involved in that? So it's questions you got to ask. But yeah, shooting classes, I would do some civilian stuff, pistol or carbine, and it's still going to be the same ideas of that performance or that practical application of shooting a pistol or shooting a rifle. So yeah.
I've heard some instructors do like the hybrid, and they have like an invite type deal where like you've taken 3 of my classes as civilian.
Yeah.
I will you can have but if you're teaching to like LE, then it doesn't really make sense for them to
Right.
like when you get out of your patrol car that you're not in.
Right. And I would also say, guys, if it's an all LE class and then I invited a couple civilians there, and let's say it's an active shooter
Mhm.
or a vehicle class, the officers are going to start to ask, well, I don't recognize that guy. What
Yeah.
department you? And they'll come over and talk to you. And as soon as you would say, well, I'm not a cop, I'm a civilian, I'm like,
Stolen valor.
well,
Just
not
kidding.
that.
I'm
It's
Not
just
even
kidding.
that.
yeah,
Just-
it's just like they're going to shut down completely, and they're going to start questioning, why is he here?
Mm-hmm.
Not so much of maybe the shooting portion of it, or them looking bad or whatever. It's like, why would you want to teach a civilian how to do this?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because again, you have to
Then
worry
it ends
about.
up being like Jerry Micklick.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and then you're like, well, it's Jerry.
Yeah. But
Right.
I
What
think
are you gonna
that I
do?
think
Yeah.
the biggest difference is the responsibility and risk level. Like again, even off duty as a full-time police officer,
Right.
I've got one extra magazine with me typically.
Yeah.
Which am I carrying? Am I carrying my 10 round or my 17 round?
Right.
Is my family with me? Where am I? Do I have anything on me identifiable? There's
Right.
so many things where my first priority is I'm getting to safety, figuring out what's going
Yeah.
on, because I definitely don't want to be shot by responding officers.
No.
But again, with the civilians, if you're in a car and somebody starts shooting you, your number one thing is to get the hell out of there.
100%.
So if you have to get out of the car, you're going to get out of the car and you're going to get away and you're going to keep getting away.
Yeah.
Whereas law enforcement, it's like, all right, they're shooting at my car. I'm out of my car. I can't leave.
Yeah.
Now the fight's on. I have to stay in it. I've got backup coming and figuring out from that standpoint. So there's a whole different level of responsibility when it comes to that. So yeah, teaching civilians that you need to stay around the car when it's not really what they need to know.
No.
It's not. It's now. I'm sure there's civilian classes out there based on that teach it differently.
Yeah.
But that's I don't think that's where your teaching is.
No. And honestly, just teaching people in general, I don't want to, segregate people of civilians over here and cops over here.
Back of the
or
bus.
whatever. Yeah, back of the. I mean, just people in general, I think learning how to shoot better and be safer with a pistol is ultimately, I think, what as an instructor we should be doing anyway.
Yeah.
Making sure like, hey, are you safe with a gun? Are you, you're not standing on a line and flagging people and, just
absolutely.
really,
Number
really
one priority.
Yeah, so, and then if I can make you a better shooter, and even if you're a hobbyist, you know what I mean? Like you're just like, I just want to learn how to shoot better. Awesome. Let's go do that. You know what I mean? And so, yeah. Yep. But,
what is a good way to not get shot by a responding officer? Because I think about that all the time. Like, when you do your checklist, like if somebody comes in here, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do this. I think about like, and you see it all the time. Not all the time, but you just hear like the guy that saved the day got shot because,
what was it?
The guys came in keyed up looking for a guy with a gun, and then they found a guy with a gun. And
Colorado, where the guy shot, I think it was Colorado. He shot the active shooter who had a rifle, and he went over and picked up the guy's rifle to get it away from him.
Yeah.
And responding officer shot and killed him.
That is a messed up
it was bad.
Scenario.
Yeah. And I think the best way to do that is like, if you, again, as a civilian, or even me, I'm in that world obviously now. If I shot and put this dude down, like I'm going to get to a piece of cover where I can still see him. And as soon as I know the cops are running in the door, you know what I mean? Because you can hear them, the sirens and everything, radios are going to be going crazy. Like I'm immediately going to put that gun down to the ground and just get on the ground.
Yeah.
And just be like, and whatever and we tell this to even when we teach active shooter training, we're like, listen, when the uniforms arrive, they are in charge. No questions asked. We're not debating it. I'm not going to get in an argument or a pissing match with you about I'm a police officer. At that moment, nobody cares.
Yeah.
Because the run is active shooter. Like this is the run, like, or the call for service that came in. So everybody's showing up, they're up here, they're keyed up, so they're going to be looking with a guy for the gun. If I'm standing there covering down on a dude, guess what? I'm the dude with the gun.
Yeah. They're a bunch of hammers looking for a nail.
That's it. 100%. Yeah. That's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to, I got a big hammer. Here we go. So
yeah, I think the best thing to think about is you're not there to find them and stop them. You're there for your safety and your family's safety and whoever's there. You're not going into that mode of, I hear the gunfire coming from down the hall, but I'm right next to an exit.
Right.
I think what happens, like in that case, the guy did the job, but then he continued further with it past that civilian aspect. And that's,
like he was going to go break down his rifle and be like, I did it.
Right.
Yeah, the guy's on the ground. He's down. You could, like you said, you could find cover and you could still keep on him. If he starts to reach for the weapon, go ahead and shoot again.
Yeah.
But you can stay back and stay out of the fight. Again, you hear sirens, put it on the ground, hands out.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that'll say, well, you should holster the weapon and let them know. I think lay it down,
just lay down,
hands out, stay away from it. That way they know, okay, there's a firearm there. He's there. Let's figure that out.
Yeah.
Rather than, hey, because all you need is the one guy that's like, hey, I've got a gun on me. It's right here.
Right.
And now they think you're, and it's just, just, there's no perfect scenario.
Yeah.
But definitely not standing there
holding the gun. No,
definitely
I would not tell anybody to do that. I'd be like, don't do that.
Yeah.
And we've had those. I've had people ask me that question just, in conversations and they're like, oh man, I want to stand and hold him. I'm like, I wouldn't do that. And then we have this same talk and they're like, oh, that is pretty bad. I'm like, yeah, dude, this is how we're thinking.
Yeah. Cause even human nature, we run up, they've got the gun on them, drop the gun. And instead of just immediately dropping it because, I don't want to drop my $1,200 Kimber, it's like they turn and look at you to say, I'm not the bad guy. Well, tunnel vision, whether or not you can hear them. Next thing you know, you're getting shot because you were just trying to explain what you were doing.
I don't know how many of these videos I've seen too, where they're pulling the gun out and you can tell they're going to put it down instead of like they're actually getting commands like don't touch it. Right. I'll take it off you, and they're just like trying to get it away from them as fast as possible, like it's burning a hole in them, and then they get shot.
Yeah. Can we also back up for a second? I don't know if you guys caught this or not, but he just talked about pulling a Kimber out.
Yeah.
And then the last one a year ago
was an XD.
Okay.
So
I was just about to flame.
I was making fun of I have never owned a Kimber. I've never. First off,
they're expensive.
I was going to say, you two idiots do nothing but make fun of me for owning my gangster cheap stuff. So don't ever. Both of you know I could never afford or would pay that much money for a handgun.
I actually have a couple Kimbers in the gun safe if you want to hold them.
Oh my God.
Do they fit the Serpa holster that's sitting on top of your gun safe?
Oh my God.
I wasn't going to bring it out, but I did.
Yeah. I'm going to walk away. It's time to go. Let's turn this shit off.
They're actually for sale if you're interested.
Yeah.
Half
Let
off.
me go. I drove my daughter's car. Let me go see how much changes in the ashtray.
Dig through. I got 55 cents. Here you go.
75 cents and a breath mint.
Yes. Yeah.
I think you did when you got that Kimber rifle, it was a direct Kimber for Kimber trade, wasn't it?
I definitely made out on that deal. Yeah.
It was a Kimber 1911 for a Kimber
308. Yeah. So it's
don't-
for sale. If you want to.
I'm trying to
Are we
contemplate
allowed
that
to sell
trade.
guns on the podcast? Do we get
I don't-
demonetized for that?
I don't know.
What?
Yeah.
It's not for sale.
That's not for anybody listening. Yeah.
But if anyone
okay.
wants to know how much it's worth,
It's okay.
Yes.
It's
yeah.
okay for Rumble, but for YouTube, definitely
Okay.
not.
Oh, yeah. Don't
Yeah.
do
Yeah,
that.
we're not selling guns here.
No, that'd be bad.
You still shooting USPSA?
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
I shot, I started shooting not started shooting, but I was really heavily shooting this past winter, February, all through spring, up through June. Got bumped up, went to A class in carry optics, which was a good time. And then when the wife got hurt, priorities had changed a little bit because I needed to take care of her. She couldn't really walk, and then surgery, and so I had to kind of back off a little bit. Still training, still doing dry fire, going to the range and stuff like that. Just haven't been able to shoot that many matches this year towards the end of the year. But yeah, still shooting USPSA. It's having a blast, having a good time, and of course shooting with a bunch of retired cops and other civilians that also understand our sense of humor, and we break balls with the best of them. I tell guys all the time, I'm like, if you're going to squad with us, understand that better have thick skin. Don't take anything personal, and because it's going to be brutal. Yeah.
So where are you shooting in January and February?
So I go over to Lima,
Okay.
and there's an indoor range there called Midwest,
Okay.
and they have there's at that one in Lima. There's another building. It's all one big building, but there's another section that's attached to the building that a couple of the owners built on, and it's just a big open room you can shoot 280 or 300 degrees.
Okay.
And so they'll put usually 3 or 4 stages in there, and then they'll
That's cool.
open up the other side. So I think we ran 8 stages back in February, and it was a classifier match. So we had 8 classifiers there that day. So it was really, really cool. So you can go over there, but that's also at that facility in that other bigger building. They also have they bought shipping containers, and they stacked them on top of each other. And they built a little town.
Yeah.
And you can drive cruisers in there and stuff. And
Dang.
they rent it out to
We've done that before.
Yeah. And they do,
Yeah.
they rent it out to bachelor parties and stuff. And the guys
Nice.
do airsoft in there or
Nice.
force on force sims, rounds or whatever. So that's kind of cool. So we go over there and shoot in January, February.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, it's a little chilly to be doing some outdoor matches.
Yeah. I'm not a cold weather guy. This is already, I'm done. It's great. Let's
right.
just get this back to 90 degrees. Let's go, so. Yeah. So still shooting, still, this year or next year, I should say, going to start pushing and get back into it and shoot a bunch of matches, and definitely shoot at least once a month, probably twice a month.
You gonna challenge yourself at all and hop on the revolver and make master with carry optics first?
Yeah. Is that a real question?
No.
Revolver? Yeah. So am I going to wear cutoff jeans too and tube socks pulled up to my knees? And
With
Chuck
the
Taylors?
red stripes.
Yeah, still the red and blue stripes. Yeah. No. I'm going to obviously push to get the M class and carry optics. And do some work and see what happens.
Do you reload your own stuff?
No. So I buy ammo from Outdoor Dynamics, which is in North Carolina. That's the ammo that I shoot for matches.
Cool.
Yeah. So I shoot their ammo because it's really soft shooting and
It's getting to the point now where it's almost like breaking even between buying and making.
it is.
Yeah.
The reloading is just, it's not
Like we're sitting on a whole bunch of raw components that we just haven't put together, and it's
Right.
let's go buy some ammo.
right. Yeah. I'm going to zip down there and go buy some.
Yeah. Well, the prices have sort of, we're never going to get back to
Oh,
the good old days
Yeah.
when you could buy ammo super cheap,
Yeah.
but it has flattened back down a little bit. It's not as awful.
yeah. I remember being able to buy, I think this was late 90s, early 2000s. You could buy 1,000 rounds of PMC. You guys remember PMC ammo?
Oh yeah.
It's still rocking.
Oh, yeah.
It's Korean,
And,
isn't it? I think it's like Remington bought it, but it's like Korean ammo.
I think you're right. You could buy 1,000 rounds of that for $89.
Holy smokes.
Oh, it was awesome. You just
So I gotta
they had
imagine back
pallets of it.
then, like 1,000 primers were like $2.
Yeah, it wasn't There was nothing to it.
Before primers were cool.
Yeah.
You
We had
could
somebody
buy
tell us
those,
that.
what is it, the Thunderbolt 22
22,
ammo? You can
yes.
buy that with pocket change.
Yes, right. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
man.
I got 50 cents. I'll buy 1,000 rounds of that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
They took everything from us.
They did.
Yes. So yeah, still shooting and having a good time with that. And again, that relates right over to classes and the practical shooting side of things. And I think that's where everybody needs to go. If you're being serious about wanting to carry a gun and or shooting to get better, you should be in the practical shooting side of the house.
Mhm.
They do it the best. You know what I mean? And when you watch those guys shoot, you're like, okay, yeah, this is how we should have been training years and years ago. I think we even talked about that last year on the podcast.
Oh, yeah, we definitely did.
So
Shooting is shooting.
it
you
is
know?
100%. Shooting is shooting. And if I can handle this pistol or this rifle really, really well and put the rounds where I want them to go, then everything else gets easier because it gives more bandwidth. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like I don't have
Oh, yeah.
to think about what this thing's doing and aiming and lining. It just happens. And so I get more bandwidth to be able to figure out, oh, where's the bad guy? What do I need to do? So
I don't think I've seen one body cam footage of an officer standing completely still and shooting.
no, not
Yeah,
really.
and having a great
seem to
grip
do
and
a
a
lot-
great stance.
For
and-
some reason, they seem to do a lot better when they're sprinting. Like some of these shots, I'm like,
Mhm.
you were
Right.
running as fast as you can with a gun and you made like a 80-yard shot with a pistol. Like
Yeah.
what just happened?
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny too when you see some of those videos, where they're coming out of. I know some of the agency they work for they're heavy involved in practical shooting.
Yeah.
And I'll text the lead fire instructor and be like, "Hey, I see your guys got into another one." I'm like, "How was it?" And he's like, "It was nothing."
Yeah.
So and it kind of reminds me of the guy. Remember, was it last year or the year before? The guy gets out on an active shooter. He's got the cup of coffee in his hand.
I was just thinking about that.
yeah.
I
He's
love that video.
Gets out.
That's so awesome.
That's what we
walks
call
around.
it. That's what
Yeah.
we call a Chad right there.
Yeah.
I think you even hear him sigh. Like,
Yeah, he does. He's
Yeah,
like,
he does. Here we go. Yeah, it was like 150 or
And then-
180 or a shot or something.
yeah.
yeah, no rush, no panic. It just do.
Yeah.
You can also tell by the way he like racks it and then slowly puts a select fire on semi and then
Yeah.
he's done and clicks it off. And
Yeah.
it's not just like this.
Yeah.
Sometimes you
Yeah.
see him like
Yeah.
fighting for it and then it's like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah, and his confidence level, because he knew. He's like, popped off the round, he knew. He's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
yep, we're good.
Yeah, he's down. He's about 150 yards away. Yada yada. Yeah, it's a great video. So
usually when I see like an LPVO and then the guy's wrist has like a memorial band on it,
Yeah.
you're like, oh, something's about to happen.
Yeah.
Which, going back to the windshield,
done
when you've
this
got
before.
what was it, the one at Vegas where the guy's in an active pursuit, shooting through the
Oh,
windshield
yeah.
while he's driving, and there's just holes
Like you
Yeah.
can't.
all over. And I'm just like, I would like to see, and I know it didn't happen, like, all right, let's do a reconstruction of this. Let's go find all of your
Yeah.
rounds.
yeah,
Let's go see how many houses, cars, people,
yeah,
yeah.
I've seen him use rifles, like hip fire, like under the shoulder, firing through the.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I think again that one was I think that one he was pissed
right,
and he was like, I'm gonna show this guy what's up,
yeah,
and had no idea where his rounds were going.
yeah.
No clue.
Emotional shooting is the thing.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, very
you
much so.
Panic fire. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're firing at the pace of panic. You know what I mean? Because you're like, oh, and you never prepared for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or you're getting so emotional because you're getting angry. You know
Yeah.
what I mean, law enforcement officers,
Yeah.
that has happened for years. Not the shooting piece, but like, cops pulling somebody over in a traffic stop and they're angry because of what the person did in front of them. They
Mhm.
thought they were being a dumbass, and they get up there and then they just
They're already angry.
Yeah, they're already mad and they start screaming at the person and then they're like, then they jerk them out of the car and it just kind of goes downhill where they give them a ticket or So
I don't remember you guys probably know the statistic, but the switch between time of shooting to end of engagement when it was like revolvers was like 4 or 5 rounds. And then you see it's like 15 to 17. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, well, Glock 9mm type,
Mhm.
15 to 17.
Yeah.
That kind of goes to show you shoot till it's empty, or you emotionally shoot till you make yourself feel good.
Yeah.
That's what Clint Smith says all the time, the godfather of shooting, but just shoot to make yourself feel good.
The other thing that happens, or if you look back at that time period, and I'll use Ohio as the example, right? Like Ohio's revolver qualification back in the day was difficult. Like you had to, at 75 feet, You were at 75 feet with a revolver. You had to shoot 6 rounds standing,
Mm-hmm.
reload, go to the prone position, and shoot 6 from prone. And the time was crazy fast. Like you couldn't mess around. I think because the qualifications used to be harder, that guys were like, okay, I've got to pass this qual. Now, I mean, we talked about it last time. It's this qualification now is like super easy. I mean, we're taking guys at the department and we're like, hey, we're going to start back here at 50 feet. You need a magazine of 8 rounds. And we're running the qual backwards with a consistent, like a constant clock. And they're doing it in like 52 seconds. And if you look at the total time, it's like, you know, almost 2 minutes that they have.
It's
to
crazy.
run it. Yeah. And you're just like, that was, hey, by the way, you just shot the qual backwards. And you score it. And it goes back to, man, you shot better running after the person, you know, you shot so much better doing that than you did like standing and drawing and, you know, like, you know, so so we've done this.
Yeah. And kind of going back to that, because I've gone through it that way. For me, it kind of helps build your confidence too. Cause it's not like we go to the range and like, okay, guys, we're going to load up. We're going to run the qualification. We're going to run it backwards. It's just like, okay, guys, load up. We're going to start shooting. Let's go back here and shoot first.
Yeah.
And then we do everything. And I've been doing this qualification enough times over the years that I'm like, is he? Dirty bastard.
Yeah.
You know, and we get done and then you get the younger guys and they're like, yeah, you just shot the entire qualification backwards without throwing around.
Right.
Let's do it forward. And now we're going to do it for your qualification.
All backwards doesn't count?
No.
You have to do it in a sequential order.
Well, it's a sequential, not so much the sequential order. I think it's so much they have to know. Like my understanding is you have to tell them this is your qualification.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
This is a test.
Yes.
Basically, this is your test. You can't just run it and be like, hey, you guys passed.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know if they're thinking that's the psychological aspect of it. Who knows what OPATA is thinking when they put this stuff into practice?
Are there any other like education pieces or things that you have to do training in a certain amount of time as far as like force on force or any like sim shooting, like sim rounds?
So do you mean like what's like by state standards to be a police officer?
Or, you know, I mean,
For your department?
I don't know.
So
enlighten me.
So for the department, no. So the only thing the department has to do, right, is they have to get you through the CPTs. Basically, it's like continuing education credit type of stuff, right? They have to get you through that. I think, was it 24 hours this year?
Yeah.
It was 24.
It was 24, but I think firearms was part of that. So I think
it could be.
Yeah.
We added it in to our department.
We added tons. We had like 40 hours this year.
Yeah, we had 40 hours that OPATA is going to pay the department for, but you got to do the 24. And it's usually like a domestic violence update. Then you have like, I think we had a legal update and we had like dealing with the mentally ill, you know, and stuff like that. And then, but again, my old department, every year it was mandatory we did active shooter training. Well, that kind of came out of the fact we've had 3 active shooters. So
makes sense.
It kind of makes sense.
Yeah,
It made
makes
sense for us. And then the other thing that we started mandating every year was defensive tactics training. And the reason for that was, again, 10 plus years ago, we were like, well, what's the probability of shooting somebody versus using defensive tactics, you know, in this agency? What was going to be much higher. And the way I explain defensive tactics is most police departments or officers think of it as, well, it's an actual use of force. Like, I have to grab you. I'm using force to put you on the ground, to handcuff you, whatever. The way I talk to people about it is, I'm like, your mere presence is the start of defensive tactic, combatives, whatever you want to call it. Like the way that I approach the person. You know, if I look
body language,
if my uniform just like hangs off of me like a trash bag, and my you know, the old school NYPD, like the belt's half hanging down, you got one
the Han Solo going on.
You look like a soup sandwich.
Yeah. You look like a soup sandwich. You know, you look like, you just look bad. Well, then the bad guy's going to size you up.
Sure.
And they'll tell you that if you sit down and talk to these people that you're arresting and just kind of see what they're thinking, they'll go, yep, I knew I could take you, or no, they wouldn't. You know,
they're picking the easy target.
Absolutely. You know, and again,
it's primal.
Yes, it is. And that the FBI does a class, I think we talked about it last time too, called it's a LEOCA class, law enforcement officers killed or assaulted in the line of duty. Some guys, it's like, it's really old information. And a lot of it was when I went through it, like I went through it probably 10 years ago and they were still showing videos from like the 70s.
Yeah.
But the videos were like they were interviewing, the FBI was interviewing suspects that had assaulted or killed police officers. They had to admit that before the conversation could even start. And there was this one guy that they were talking to, and they asked, they were like, why did you assault the officer? And he goes, I looked at him and in 5 seconds was like, I can kill this guy. And you're like, wow, it's happening that fast. Like they're making the decision. So when I'm talking about defensive tactics with police officers, I talk about, hey, the way that you approach this, like, how am I standing? What's my demeanor? And I don't have to be a jerk. I don't have to be like, a robot, citizen, come here and all that other garbage. I mean, I can talk to you.
Citizen.
Yeah.
Judge Dredd.
Yeah, Judge Dredd, right? But I approach it and I'm always like, hey man, my name's Dustin. I work for such and such police department. Hey man, we got this complaint about you. What's going on? And I'm like, hey, if you can keep your hands out of your pockets for me, I'd greatly appreciate it. I'm not knife handing you and screaming at you right off the rip because nobody likes that.
Right.
Sure. So that's kind of the way that I explain those things. But again, coming back to it, there's the only thing that's mandated is the CPTs, and then they've got to qualify you. Those things they have to do. And again, the qualification is not for you. It's for the department. Always remember that. It's for them. You know what I mean?
And it's a minimum standard.
It's a minimum standard.
I've had officers tell me before they'll throw around on purpose. And I'm like, why? Well, that way, if I ever go to court, they won't be able to say that I'm an expert marksman because, look, and if you
That's
always
insane.
Yeah, dude,
Yes.
I'm telling you.
Yes,
it
happens.
and it's more than once I've had people tell me that. And I'm like, it's a minimum standard. All you're doing is showing people that you can't
That's
meet
kind
the
of
minimum.
fuddish, if you ask me.
It is. It is.
Fuddish. It's
very,
very
very
fuddish.
fetish.
Yeah.
I better destroy my DD-214
And
that says expert marksman.
I know, right?
The only reason I asked that is because, and I just didn't know if you did any of that type of training or offering any of that, like force on force or even like sim rounds or anything like that.
In the active shooter class, we do. We do more force on paper because it's learning. We're learning about how to deal with a situation or whatever.
Sure.
And then getting role players that are going to want to get shot at with sims
And
rounds and where all this stuff is.
Right.
It's kind of difficult when you're traveling.
Yeah. Well, and it's great training. I've learned more from those trainings than I have my range time. And it's not so far the last 3 years, it's been different each year. And they do that on purpose. They say, we're not going to hammer the same thing every year. We're going to add something different every year. We're going to do it a little bit differently. But what I like about when we do it, we get the why. You were saying it earlier, when you do your instructor stuff, well, okay, let's talk about why we're doing this. And we do that. We explain the why, like how to do that dynamic entry into a room.
Right.
I had never done that before.
Sure.
Where it's, just you got to know how to put those shots on. You got to do it fast. You got to get in that room fast. But then we'd also be the violator, and you can see how running in that room fast is giving you that advantage. Not, you can slice the pie all day long, but there comes a point where you have to go in.
Sure. Yeah.
How do you go in?
Yeah.
So the active shooter stuff is more than just like hunting somebody through a building and then going in.
Sure.
Yeah.
Tons of repetitions. One of the things I liked about ours, and this one happened by accident, we had one where it was the year we had somebody in an auditorium. And we go in and we got in, and I just happened to be the first one in. I just happened to be the first one. I started telling guys, hey, do this, do this, do this. Next thing I know, Lieutenant walks over and goes, okay, you kind of took charge. You're now my scene commander.
Yeah.
Let's go out in the lobby and let's start talking about
That's exactly how that class that they put on at the tactical EMS.
Yeah.
The first person that makes the decisions, though.
Yeah. And it was fantastic because it wasn't like, well, you're not the highest ranking person in the room, so we're going to have them be in charge. It was very much, okay, you might be lower ranked, but you kind of took control. So let's continue with that.
Right.
But again, having come from two other agencies, the agency I'm currently with where you were is not the norm. I wish it was, but it's not. It's far above because of the program that you guys got started there. State mandated fire your qualification is it. And mind you, you can do that in about half an hour.
Oh,
and I'm saying that's guys show up, shoot the shit. You do your 2 hours and you get paid for 2 hours and you leave.
Yeah.
But yeah, ultimately you could pull a guy off the road and be like, okay, do your qualification. 10 minutes later, sign this piece of paper. Have a nice day.
And there are departments that do that.
Yeah.
Like they do the qual. And when Ohio was coming out with this new qual,
which was a cost measure, not tactics.
Which was in 2009,
It's always about money.
2010. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It 100% it was.
Is. Well, I mean, if you look on talking about that for a second, anytime when you see budgets being cut in agencies, right? And I don't know if they do this in a fire service or not, I'm assuming, but when that starts to happen, the first thing that goes is training.
Mm-hmm.
And I was always like,
I worked at a place that didn't have a training budget for years.
Right. Yeah. My first department, we were actually lucky. It was a smaller department of about 20 guys, but like the training budget was each officer had $1,000 for the year to go to training. And now this was mid 90s. We did a lot of stuff at OPATA. OPATA was really good. And we had we didn't have what we have today of all the different trainers out there, but
all the other companies that are out there now.
Yeah. That are out there now. But, that's the first thing that goes is training. And I'm like, what you're saying though is training's not that important, but then you're going to turn around and bitch and complain about, I don't understand why our guys can't do this.
Right.
Did you train them? Well, no, not really. And then it comes again, when they were developing this new qual, I say the new qual of what we're using the last 10 plus years or 14 years, right? Is that like, well, we wanted to make this a 25 round qual. So then you could get the qual done early. And then after that, okay, well then you're going to go to training. And I'm like, they're not going to do that.
Right.
Like the chief is going to look at this and go, wait a minute. I don't have to have them out there for 8 hours and they're shooting 500 rounds. They're just going to qual and shoot 25 and that can get them back on the road. Let's do that.
Yeah.
And that's what's happened,
Yeah.
So,
You don't even have to pay overtime, only 25 rounds per officer.
Right.
Good. Done. Have a nice day.
Yeah. Yep. So,
but, so
refund the police.
Right.
Yeah.
100%. Like,
yeah.
And now I would also say another good friend of mine, Chris Palmer, says this often. And I've thought about this. He's like, I don't think we need more training in the sense of like different trainings.
Right.
I think we just need to give officers and agencies good training and then continue to build and redo that training often.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's a good idea.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like DT. If you only did DT, I remember I taught my first DT class in 1998.
What's DT?
Defensive tactics. I'm sorry.
Combatives to you Army folk.
Right. Yeah. But I had a guy that in the class that he had not been through a defensive tactics training since he'd been in the academy, which was 1980.
Mm-hmm.
He'd been a cop for 24 years. He's like, why are we doing this? And I'm like, well, Bob, because we can't hit him in the fucking head anymore. He's like, but it works. I'm like, yeah, that's why they took our blackjacks. Like, we can't have those, bro. And he's like, ridiculous. You know what I mean? I'm like,
I'm out of here.
Yeah, I'm like, well, okay, calm down, Cletus. You know what I mean? But yeah, he was an old school guy and he just didn't understand. But there are agencies still like that across the country. Where they're just like, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah. My previous agency, we were fortunate that we got 2 hours for qualification. But honestly, we'd show up, chat, joke around, have a good time, go shoot the qualification, sign our paperwork and done. That was it.
Yep.
That was the only way I was getting training is when I was still with you guys or before, and I would host a trainer and get the free slot and go to the class. That's the only way I was getting training. They had no training budget. Defensive tactics was, we got one of our guys that teaches at so-and-so, and he's going to come in and show us some stuff for 2 hours.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, I had to take an online class about mental health pertaining to corrections officers online.
Nice.
Well, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
So OPATA put out this, and I don't even know if they have it anymore, that online. They do eOPATA, which is that, but they had another one that smaller agencies for a small fee could tap into. One of them was an online tutorial for defensive tactics. Yeah. You would sit at a desk and watch a video on defensive tactics.
That's the way the fire service went in EMS, especially during COVID.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It was all right, so
the forever flu scared us.
So we can't like be together, even though we're running on sick people.
Right.
Yeah. We can't be together at station. So you guys just do some online, CEs, get your training done.
As you sit next to each other and do it.
Yeah.
This is what a fire looks like.
Yeah.
They tried telling us we couldn't ride together in the truck without masks on.
Yeah.
But in the station, we were cool.
Yeah. No, we weren't allowed to ride in a car with another officer that we were just sitting next to at lunch.
Right.
But we had to wear our masks in the car.
It's like we're sleeping in the same room. Like we're bunked up in the same room.
Yes. Right. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yes.
I don't know how we got on that, but the reason I was asking
Rabbit hole.
Shitty training,
Yes.
COVID.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, the reason I was asking about the force on force and the sim rounds is because I took a class one time and it was civilian. It wasn't, law enforcement, but it was civilians. And the instructor actually roped our guns, made them safe. And he wanted us to draw on him like he had a knife or something. And it was more like escalation, de-escalation. And he wanted us to pull our guns and actually pull the trigger, being safe.
Yeah.
Because he was like, look, we're burning down paper on the range. We're great shots. What do you do if somebody walks in front of your gun? You take your finger off the trigger.
Yeah.
Put the muzzle away. He's like, I want you to aim down your gun.
Was that the Murphy class?
Yeah. And it was and that he's like, some people don't agree with this. I don't know. I was kind of wondering what your take is on that.
I'd have to see the class a little bit about that.
It was
I see where he's going.
Was it what was that class? Civilian?
He's changed the name of it like 2 or 3 times in the last 2 years.
Great class.
Yeah.
But he was like, look, he's like, a lot of, especially civilians, are never going to point their gun at somebody.
Yeah. Yeah.
And have to pull the trigger.
Yeah. Giving you the experience of actually having to deal with it.
Yeah.
Because again, in law enforcement, we do it.
And
often.
his whole class wasn't revolved just around that.
Like his first day was like pepper spray.
It was all pepper spray.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was like, he put on goggles. Now we had the palm, like the inert stuff, the stuff that just,
Yeah.
but he was like,
I think more people are switching to medical, but I think his big thing was like a lot of it was medical. Like throw a tourniquet on yourself.
Yeah.
You didn't see that much in like a regular training scenario. It was just like we're burning up 1,000 rounds in the next 2 days.
Yeah, no,
Let's just make it happen.
His, you had to wear basically an IFAC or whatever, and you'd be doing something. He'd be doing lecturing or demoing something, and he'd be like, "All right, you're fucking shot.
Right.
Your left arm spurting or whatever." And you'd have to, which was really cool.
Yeah. Interesting. I had not.
But it was a good take that I've never heard before. He was the first one that I've done. Yeah. That he was like, we're going to make your guns completely safe. They're triple checked or whatever, but you're going to point your gun at me and you're going to pull the trigger.
Right. Right. I think there are other ways to do that. Not with a real gun. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Cording them and doing all that. Yeah. You're making them safe, but it's just like,
I
want to make sure.
I took one with Chris Seipert. And we did those same types of things. It was kind of the same similar class, but we used airsoft. Oh, so perfect. you could still put them in the holsters. They were the 1-to-1. You could still do that. And it was pepper spray. I liked it because it was a civilian minded class. And that was the one that got me to start carrying pepper spray. Because one of the scenarios we had was a guy coming towards me and wouldn't stop. And I'm sitting there thinking, besides me going hands on with some crazy guy in the parking lot, the only thing I've got on me is my handgun and a really big knife. And I'm like, and his thing was it's a civilian class. Knife. So he's like, so if you spray somebody, you don't have to spray them and then hang out and take care of them. He goes, you can spray them and keep running.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. But we used airsoft. And they were the 1-to-1. I mean, it was a Glock 17 that fit perfectly in my Glock 17 holster.
That would be pretty cool.
Because
you forgot about thunder and lightning, though.
Yeah,
you did. Yeah. I mean, come on.
Well,
we'll talk about that in about 5 minutes. Yeah.
But it's a calm down, man. Calm down.
Tim's ready to go. He's in the chamber.
I just got the reference, dude. I was like,
yes.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, it's good training to have. But yeah, I kind of the same thing. And maybe it's just he's not an airsoft guy, and but
and I think a lot, maybe some of it, and this was a few years ago. He's like, it's your gun. It's the gun that you handle every day. Yeah. I don't know. Like I said, the way he went about it, it wasn't like everybody's roped up. It was like, all right, one at a time.
Okay. Yeah.
I'd be comfortable. I think I'd be comfortable with that.
It was a small class.
Especially if I roped somebody else's gun.
Everybody was roped up. Everybody was triple checked. There was no ammo.
Yeah.
Like I said, I felt very safe about it.
Interesting. Yeah. I think you can do that. A couple of different ways.
Yeah, for sure.
And I get on the civilian side, like, hey, have you ever pointed your gun at anybody? And most people are going to go, right, what are you talking about? No, I've never done that.
Right.
To us, that's going to be like, what do you mean? I did that last week. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's called Tuesday.
Does a mall dues
talking about weapon mounted lights and stuff, right?
Oh, right.
Like, especially like for civilians, we're not clearing shit with our gun.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
Cops are doing that.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But,
And again, I think that's an individual choice thing, because you talk to some guys, they're like, well, I want I don't want a handheld flashlight and then get my gun out.
Dude,
and
you
not
can
be
get
able to
so
cover
into
down.
the weeds with lights.
I know.
It's-
Yeah.
I guess-
Oh, yeah.
And I know some guys are really into it. And I'm like, okay, all right.
Right.
It's whatever. It's personal choice, man.
Yeah.
I don't carry a light on my gun. I have a flashlight with me,
Mhm.
but I don't, excuse me, I use way more than I do than anything else.
Oh,
You know what
sure.
I mean? Like my flashlight is all the time, like getting the mail or doing this. Or,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
making sure I don't fall down a driveway in some ice or some
Yeah.
dumb shit.
I carry it on my one at work, but when I'm personal carry off duty, I don't have one on the gun. I have one in my pocket.
Kind of flashlight you carrying on your pocket?
What is it? It's a Streamlight something.
Ooh.
Let me see.
That's ProTech?
So my wife always
Oh, yeah,
teases
it's the
this is the Streamlight ProTech
Have you seen the
2L
Streamlights?
XL.
Have you seen the Streamlights that look like a Microtech?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
looks
yeah.
like a
Those are cool.
stick.
They're actually
Yeah.
on sale right now.
Those are cool.
Oh,
So
do you
they're
have
a lot thinner,
with,
but you can
Do you
just.
have an affiliate link to
Yeah.
post?
Yeah. FireRidgeDefense.com.
Yes. But yeah, I like this one because it fits in my hand really well. It's sturdy. I've dropped it so many times.
They take
It's sturdy,
the
it's
double A's
bright.
as well.
Huh?
To take the double
No,
A's.
this one takes a rechargeable battery. So it's the what is it? The 81 something or other?
18650.
Yeah, it's the
Holy shit,
18650.
nerd.
But
Yeah, he's a battery
saying?
nerd.
Yeah, that's right. He's like, okay. He's
so
like
this
fucking
one,
Rain Man over
it's actually, this is actually, it's got the Streamlight, but you just plug the battery itself into a USB.
right.
Can I see that real quick?
All right. Yeah, I've actually got two of them. I don't remember how I have two of them. But I've got one that I keep in my handgun safe. So no matter what, if I've got to open it and
right.
get something, I've got a flashlight readily
sense.
available for it.
So I was going to bring up one more thing about
Yeah.
police activity.
Yeah, for
The
sure.
one thing that drives me crazy about it is the radios in the hand.
Oh, bro.
I can watch some dude with a portable in his hand,
Yeah.
like during a gunfight, and I have to look at the corner of the screen, but it's almost always LAPD.
Yes.
But how they haven't fixed that yet, and people are
Yeah.
engaged in a fight, and they have to say
Yes.
they have to pull up their radio and say shots fired while they're shooting.
Yes.
They
And
don't
I'm
know what
like,
to do with their hands,
So-
dude.
Yes.
it
That's-
drives
yeah.
me crazy.
Yeah. That's
the people with lapel mics seem to not get shot as much.
Right. And that's
Just
a
saying.
cultural thing from
Mhm.
LAPD. That-
Really?
Yes. I've talked to a couple guys that used to work at LAPD. And that's my very first question. Other than, hey, how was it like? What was it like working in LAPD? And they're like, it's a fucking shit show. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can imagine.
Answer that one. Next question is, why do you guys not believe in radio mics? And they're like, yeah, man, it's a cultural thing.
It's
Like,
wild.
Yeah,
They
be
just-
the first guy. Yeah.
Right. I mean,
And I
they,
see so many different guns coming out of LAPD.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
they still have, I think Safariland still makes it for them. They have the low drop or the low ride holster that will swivel.
Mm.
That is a big thing out there.
Hmm.
Also, the
Weird.
the 1911 course. You have to, so they
I've seen videos of
have to
dudes-
shoot like a and I can't remember. Don't quote me on the numbers, but it's like you got to shoot a 285 or a 290 on their regular pistol qual because they also shoot the PPCT qual. If you shoot it like a 280 or 285 3 times, you can then put in for the 1911 course, which is a huge deal. Because if you're carrying a 1911 out there, I guess it's a like
So
badass level. or
I
something.
can
Fucking
see
John
in,
Wick.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
I can see in one sense where you like that dude's a good shooter. He's got a 1911, but then you're a good shooter with 8 rounds.
Right.
Seems silly.
Yeah.
Why
I have seen
why
a
do you
couple-
want to subject
Yeah.
yourself to
Now I have
that?
seen
Yeah.
a couple staccatos out there, and I'd be okay with rocking a staccato.
Yeah.
You would be.
2011.
You would be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would not.
Grip zone.
We're going back to that
Yeah.
that
Oh, you-
dollar
you
amount
I've
don't
for
seen
me.
so many problems with staccatos.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
thought they were like the bee's knees, man.
Sit
I've
down.
never seen anything
What
with
was
that.
Sit down.
what was the one that
Used gun Timmy over.
Yes, right.
They come
I can't think of his name. Stoger. What was the one that he had
Ben?
that exploded or had the round exploded in it? Just the other day he posted it.
Oh, that was another SIG.
Okay.
That was
Yeah.
another SIG. It wasn't a.
Well, that
it wasn't
that
a.
doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
I just saw. I don't know how recent this was. I think I just saw it on Instagram today or yesterday. Sig just got lost. a
Oh,
lawsuit.
$11 million
11 mil
to
from
one person.
one person.
That's it. That's nothing. That's nothing for SIG. Is
Yeah,
it?
but here's the thing though.
There's
that
multiple.
is now
Oh.
opened the door
But
for
yes.
all the other ones.
Yes.
That's where
Was
that's
this,
where that's a
was
big
this the
issue.
cop?
No, I think
this
he was a civilian. I don't think
know.
he was a
I
cop.
don't know that story enough. I saw it as well. It was yesterday. I saw
Yeah.
it. He
Yeah.
got 11 million. I was like, oh, that's going to hurt the pocket because again, You're going to open the door, and now everybody that's had that.
This was from like 2017.
You guys
or
are
something
right.
like that.
That's definitely
it's going to be a
precedent.
problem. Yes.
Yeah, you've got some precedent, whether it's in another state or not. It's like we've got another court that has said you were at fault for this.
Yes.
Now, granted, I didn't read the whole, I just read the snippet. So this guy was walking down the stairs. He had it in a holster, but then he put the whole motherfucker in his pocket.
What?
Like, it sounded like the holster was not secured. Like,
I was on a call once.
So
where there were some guy I was meeting up with like a task force at a hotel, and I walked in, and all three of them
For work,
had,
right?
Yeah, had belt clip holsters, but they were in a pocket. Like the clip was in the pocket.
Silly.
So I'm like,
Very
okay.
silly.
are you? Well,
Okay.
are you hoping that it's going to snag on the pocket enough that you can draw the gun, or are you pulling the entire thing out and then taking it out of the holster and then just like dropping the holster on the ground? I didn't get the whole concept on that's how they were carrying that day. It was really weird.
That is strange.
It was weird. But so going back to the mic thing, one thing I wanted to kind of bring up too is one thing I've always liked when we were doing our training is
who the hell's Mike?
What?
The lapel mic.
Lapel mic.
mics.
Lapel
Sorry.
mic.
Yes.
My dad's name is Mike. I know a lot of Mikes.
Right. Yeah. I got
Circling
you.
back
what the hell
to
did you say
the
about my dad? Yeah, right.
circling back to the
Larry Vickers yelled at
microphone.
my dad.
Yes.
Mic our phone. You watch so many of these videos where they start getting shot at, and the first thing they do is go to the mic.
Get a radio. Yep.
Is get a radio. And that's why, one of the first things we were doing one of our classes like that, it's like we don't even really, when we're doing all of our shooting, we don't even employ that as part of it.
Right.
And I think it's because, sometimes you need to get those rounds going against them. It's okay to get rounds going and shoot the bad guy and then get on and say shots fired, suspect down,
Yeah.
all that. It's not bang, bang, shots fired. And you've got one hand here and one hand here and you don't know what you're
while
doing.
they're shooting.
Oh yeah. No,
That's
I've seen
wild.
those too.
I don't agree with like Monday morning quarterbacking, but I
Yeah.
can definitely say I don't see how you can.
Yeah.
And depending on how you do it, I've never been one of those where watching a training video in law enforcement, I'm like, it's a Monday. You have to have a Monday morning quarterback.
100%.
We're fixing issues so that it doesn't happen again. And I've watched videos of myself just for training where I'm like, why in God's name did I do that?
Yeah.
You don't know
You
it
got to
until you
use
see
these
it
videos as
sometimes.
training.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
These are actual officers, and it's not just a made up scenario.
Well, and think about this, right? And this is the way that I kind of like to talk about this is we are Monday night quarterbacking because, okay, so think about that or put it in context. So I don't care, pick your football team, whatever, or whatever sport, right? The very next day, they are Monday night quarterbacking their own video from the game,
Yeah.
right? And they're learning how to get better.
Yeah, they're watching tape.
Of course, they're watching tape. Why aren't we doing the same thing and learning? But there's a way to do it instead of going, yeah, that fucking guy. Like I would have done it this way. Blah, blah.
Right.
Now that's the dumbass way to do it. But if you look at that and go, ooh, man, I wonder if our guys are doing that. And then we go look at our BWC videos, when a use of force or guns are coming out and you're like, oh crap, our guys are doing the same thing. And okay, well, let's fix this. And that's how a lot of that stuff came up.
Yeah.
Is we started really paying attention to what was happening and not wanting guys just getting on the radio and screaming into the mic and trying to get a gun out. I'm like, what's the priority at this point? What's important now? The win principle, right? What's important now? Shooting bad guy or giving him commands or getting on the radio? Well, I'm going to if I have to shoot my gun, I'm going to shoot my gun, but getting him compliant, you know what I mean? To where it's like, oh, okay, he's compliant. Like, yep, he's put the gun down or he's listening to me. Okay, then somebody else can get on the radio. If I'm doing this, like, Don, get on the radio. He can, okay, we've got him at whatever intersection.
Do you think the radio is like a pacifier? Because it's like a lifeline. It's just like, I have this.
Yeah.
It's
their tactical binky.
Yeah.
And
it's their tactical binky.
Yeah. And to be honest, we use that way more than any other tool we have on us.
We're on it constantly.
People coming. And
But again, the handheld, ever since I started, I've had a lapel mic.
Yeah, me too.
We had a guy at one of my agencies who did the whole swivel it off, swivel it back. Until one day he got into a fight and couldn't get to his hip.
Yeah.
Because his hands were up here and he was trying to get radio traffic and couldn't get to it.
Yep.
From that day forward, he started wearing the mic.
We had a supervisor who was the same way. He didn't want to wear the lapel mic because he was concerned that he was going to get choked with it.
Really?
And
somebody.
Right. Yeah. And
I guess it's
force, and I'm like,
somewhat valid, but
okay, but how often is that happening? Let's be realistic.
Yeah.
Are you training or keeping this idea for less than 1% of of all the uses of forces in the
I don't know that
the
I've
United
even
States.
heard of that.
Somebody's going to pull your duty boot off and beat you with it too.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
like,
I'm gonna wear flip flops.
Yeah. And he had the same situation happen to him many times in uses of force. Like he would have his radio out. We would show up to be helping him, him and another officer wrestling with a guy. And there he is with this. He's like, grab him. And then you're like, and then he puts it away. Then he gets back in. And I just look at him and go, what are you doing, man? Like, well, yeah, but he could have choked me. I'm like, dude, you're worrying about something that's non-existent. You know what I mean? Again, not looking at things and realistically.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I do have a question. Not to dive down this rabbit hole, but you're talking about radios.
Yeah.
Are you guys still using codes like 10 codes and disposition codes?
Yes.
What in the hell is the point of that? So now listen.
we're not supposed to use Tim codes. We're not even supposed to use 10 codes anymore, but
So after,
Tim's place still does.
Yeah.
Yeah. So after what? Katrina or whatever.
9/11. Yeah.
9/11. Right. Yeah. NIMS. Right. You guys have NIMS training, right?
NIMS protocol. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, and I've noticed the cops, like they still use their 10 codes, right? A 10-10, right? Is a gun.
So
depends on
it depends on the agents. See, and that's even more fucked up.
Yes.
Yeah, because all three of the agencies that I've worked for have used different 10 code systems. So I find myself screwing up that a lot.
This is what I love.
10-4.
What I realize about the cops, right? They're using all these codes, but then they're saying everybody's name. They're saying everybody's social security number.
Yes.
And all this other bullshit. And then they're just talking.
Yes.
Like we have one guy that I listen to, he's like a 1-900 operator, I swear, on the radio. He just talks like he's, whatever.
Right.
But why are you using the codes?
Yeah.
When you're saying everything else.
Yeah.
That's what I don't understand. Like you're not. Everybody and their brother can listen to you.
Yeah. And they can find the codes online. Yeah. Somebody's going to have them.
So there was originally, from my understanding, the codes and signals for like Buckeye State Sheriffs is what they call them. And then 10 codes for police departments, most police departments that are using those. Some departments, like my old department, they used an abbreviated version of Buckeye State Sheriff stuff. It was to make or give, it was so you didn't just get on the radio and be like, okay, so I'm going to be doing a traffic stop. Blah, blah. It was to shorten the conversation so other guys could get on the radio.
Sure.
Which makes sense.
Sure. I get that.
But now it's like, same thing. You're like, well, I'm like, okay, I need a RP check. Okay. Well, and I'm like, okay, this person's name is, just shit the rag man, social security number. And you're still talking this amount of time. Right.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really make any sense.
We didn't shorten anything up.
No.
Yeah. It's almost like, so for me, I don't make traffic stops that much anymore. But when I did, I would, just tell me they're valid. Tell me they have a good, I'd be like, here's their operator's license number. Here's their OLN. Tell me they're valid. Yeah. I don't know, no other info. Just tell me they're valid.
Valid, wants and warrants. There you go.
Yeah.
That's one of them.
They'll be like, they're valid, negative.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
NIF,
Done.
WW. Yep.
Right.
But yeah, you will have other guys that are like, and if they don't ask for it, the dispatcher is going to be like full name, date of birth, social security number, address, height, weight. I mean, it's just a nightmare. And again, now that we have computers in the cars, it makes it even easier to do all that because
you can
it's
do it yourself.
all right there.
Yeah. That's if you turn that on. I didn't.
Yeah. I turned that crap on.
Yeah, I didn't turn it on. Dude, I didn't turn my MDT on for 5 years. Because I have a radio. I'm like,
because computers are a fad, right?
Yes, it is a fad.
Yes.
They're going to go away. In 2 years.
And the funny part is we have younger guys, they come in and they're like, hey, computers are down. We can't do anything today.
Right.
Why?
Yeah.
Well, you traffic stop without a computer?
Yeah.
Yep.
How am I going to know who he is? I have this radio.
I only used the computers for like running information later. I never
Minesweeper.
I never typed on. Yeah. I still don't know how to play that game.
Yeah.
I never typed in their information. I never did my traffic stops. Everything was still over the radio.
Yeah. A lot of guys.
And guys would get mad at me for it, but I'm like, I don't want to be staring at a computer screen while I'm pulling over a car.
Right.
I'm paying attention to the car.
Yeah. Now, it is useful too, though. Like if you pull the car over and they give you, a name, date of birth, and you're like, this seems shady.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then I can go back and run it and be like,
oh yeah,
well, that picture doesn't match that person.
I just didn't know if the whole 9/11 and the NIM stuff, if that was shoved down your throat, like use plain English for
It is at large events.
Yeah.
Large
just
events.
that, but not
Yeah.
your day-to-day operations.
Multi-agency events.
Or if
Right.
we get into like, there were situations to where we would get in the things and things were starting to get very, I don't want to say heated, but there was a lot going on. Usually somebody, and this is something we pushed in the department too, like didn't have to be a supervisor.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I started there, everything had to come from the supervisor. And we kind of changed that to where it's now, if I'm in this, like we're all on the call and we're on this run and it's just wild. Okay, well then one of us can go, dispatch, we're going to NIMS protocol. And then they would immediately switch. And then the supervisor would be like, yep, good call, NIMS protocol now. And then we would just run it. And then we get done with the run and be like, okay, back to normal.
Is that
traffic.
hard to go back and forth though?
No,
No.
Mm-mm.
no.
Okay.
You just kind of get used to it.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And again, worst case scenario, you use plain talk and nobody's going to get all pissy with you.
And you
I
do it
haven't
all the
seen
time.
that.
What?
You do it all the time. Go back and forth.
The place I work for goes back and forth. Yeah.
Yes.
Old habits die hard, I guess.
Yeah. But the crazy part is how different they are. Like the current agency, it's almost like there's no rhyme or reason. It's just like the first part of it is like they're here. Then like the second 2/3 is alphabetical. And then there's just some extra ones thrown on at the end. Whereas Buckeye Sheriff's is the one I had at my previous agency. And that's like your first 20 are, shit's happening. These are the,
Right.
if you hear 10-1 through 10-20, you better be turning on your lights and sirens and going to where you need to be. That's the way it was. Everything
Right.
else was just kind of there.
Right.
And then the agency before that was kind of a bastardized version between a city codes and the Buckeye Sheriff. But yeah, the current agency is just weird.
Yeah.
I can't there's like 5 that I have memorized and that's it. They'll be lucky if I, yep.
What are those?
So the crashes. So was it 10-4, 10-4A? That's a non-injury and a non-injury hit skip.
I was figuring like I'm clocking out.
Oh yeah, that's 10-1 and 10-2.
10-2.
Taking
Yeah,
a shit.
10-1, 10-2. And so here's the other fun
eating.
part. Buckeye.
If I'm at 10-200, that's I'm going to the bathroom.
So Buckeye Sheriff's has 10 codes and signals.
Yeah.
So it's like the 10 codes are what you're doing. The signals are what happens.
Yeah.
They don't have signals there.
Yeah.
So it's like, but then like my first 2 agencies were really weird. So my first agency going signal 5 was I'm out at the scene. The other agency going signal 5 was I'm taking my lunch. So my first day I get a call, heated argument at the motel. I get there and I tell dispatch I'm signal 5 and I hop out and I'm do and they're like, why the hell is this guy taking a lunch? We just sent him to a freaking call. and they raised me on the radio. They're like, and I'm like, no, I'm here. Don't worry. I'll
figure it out later.
I'll figure it out later.
Yeah.
But I mean, that causes confusion when you're jumping agencies.
What have you guys, for you guys, I guess, did you guys do any training or anything this last year? Take any classes, do anything?
Not gun related.
I worked
No.
overtime.
Oh, that's right. We were talking about that earlier.
What did I do this year?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Training the crap out of your dog. I've been seeing that all over.
Yeah. Doing some dog hunting.
I guess we went hunting.
Yeah, we went hunting.
Yeah.
Working overtime.
We podcast on our days off.
Nice.
I did a lot of 4-wheeler riding this year.
Nice. Okay.
Well, you're firefighters, so you get like 18 days off a month. So I'm close.
Yeah.
I was
close.
exaggerating,
You're
but
close.
I'm still
You're
close.
close. You're
Yeah.
close.
Well, the other day you said like 27. I'm like, that's not right.
Well, I was just being a jerk at that
Yes,
point.
right.
It's close.
Well, when I work more than you do in 2 days, than you do in a whole week.
It evens out.
Most people do lately. So.
Right. Yeah. It's true.
Well, I got to see Don for a week over the summer for that tactical EMS class. That was a really good
that was
class.
a good class. That was a
Nice.
good one. I'm
It was
going to try and
kinda
get it back this summer.
A last minute jump in where I was like, I'll take it, thinking it was going to be RTF.
Oh, yeah, that was out at the campus, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought
Okay.
it was going to be RTF, but it's the first thing they said is this is not an RTF class.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I'm like, oh, this is, and they actually had a lot of stuff where I'm like, I know all this crap. I'm a medic,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And they did the same thing. They throw on a tourniquet randomly and they talk about taking charge and setting up triage or CCPs,
Mm-hmm.
casualty collection points, and doing it the right way instead
Yeah.
of being like, yeah, I can fill a room full of people and like teaching you how to do like putting all their heads together on like a star so you can
Yeah.
sit in the middle of them and
Yes.
take care of everybody. That was actually pretty cool because to me, I was just like, I can drag people in a room and take care of them and
Right.
triage them, but doing things like that, it's a pretty good class.
Yeah.
The
Nice.
star
Yeah.
method, huh? That's interesting.
I don't think they called it this. Maybe I made that up.
I can picture that in my head though, and it
Yeah.
And like
actually
the-
makes sense.
and doing like the March exam.
Yeah.
And it was a good turnout. There were a couple city cops, and was there a deputy or two in there as well?
It was interesting to have the cops in there too, and like change roles and do stuff like that.
Yeah, it was a good class. I'm going to try and get them back this coming summer as well. Try and get more people to go.
Yeah, it was fun.
No, that's good.
Were you going to ask Don about him shooting himself?
Well, there's that.
Wow. So I mean, here's the thing.
There could have been a nicer segue.
I was either going to talk about, training scars or armchair quarterbacking, shooting yourself. I don't know.
Wow.
Right.
Don, you have the floor. Tell us what happened.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay. So
let's hear the story.
So first and foremost,
Full disclosure, he said he was okay with talking about it.
Oh yeah. No, they're not. They're not complete and
I
total.
don't want your wife to be like, they bullied you in the
Yeah, no, they're not. They're not total dicks.
Yeah.
No. So back in January, I start out when I tell everybody this. At no point am I taking any of the blame off of myself. It was not an accidental discharge. I don't like that term. It was negligent. I neglected my training. I got comfortable, and that's ultimately what caused it. Had just put a new red dot sight on my little Glock 43X. Had rounds in it. I was unloading it to put it back in the safe. And after 20 some odd years handling guns, I got too comfortable, and I just did the 5 or 6 racks because, you drop the magazine, you do the 5 or 6 racks. That takes care of that gets a round out of there. But I didn't slow down, and I didn't physically and visually check the chamber. And ultimately, as we all know, to take apart a Glock, you drop it, you pull the slide off, you pull the trigger. I've got big frickin', meat eaters.
Meat mittens.
Yes, there we go. I can only kind of hazard a guess as to what happened because I'll be very honest, I don't remember the actual. I remember leading up to and after. I don't remember the actual event. Pulled the trigger, put a jacketed hollow point 9mm through my ring finger on my left hand, entered in the palm side, went out the back just above the knuckle. After going through my hand, it went through the outside layer and the inside layer of drywall into my daughter's bedroom. Ricocheted off the wooden desk in her room and landed on the floor in just about a fairly solid piece. So just, for people that are like, oh, it's not going to, no, it'll go through drywall.
For sure.
My entire family was home. That's one of the worst parts about that story. My wife heard the bang, started screaming, what's going on? She was in another room. I just started yelling, call 911. Went and grabbed my tourniquet off my duty belt because I knew that's exactly where it was.
Were you like leaking a lot?
Do you think you needed? There was blood all over the house.
Were you like spurting?
It wasn't spurting. And, talking to my surgeon later, he's like, actually, you probably didn't need the tourniquet. But he's like, but in retrospect, he's like,
why not?
Why not? He's like, unless you're medically trained to know that's not enough blood.
We see a lot of cops put on tourniquets on wounds that don't need it,
but it doesn't hurt.
Yeah, but it doesn't hurt them, and it works.
Yeah. So I got it on, got outside. I can't say enough good things about my kids when this happened. All they know is their dad's been shot and there's blood everywhere, and he's screaming, call 911. And now it's deathly quiet because now I've got the tourniquet on, the bleeding stopped. My wife's trying to figure out what's going on. My now 17-year-old son was just about to turn 17. 15-year-old son and my 18-year-old daughter took it upon themselves. They all grabbed their cell phones and called 911. As soon as they relayed the information, address, this is what happened. Dispatcher said, I'm going to stay on the phone because it was 2 males and a female. So they said, I'm going to stay on the phone with your sister. My sons immediately got off. My daughter stayed on the phone. My 17-year-old son ran out to the end of the my 15-year-old son ran out to the end of the driveway, waiting for the squad so he could tell them where to go. 17-year-old son waited at the backyard to tell them where they could come in. My daughter stayed with me so she could relay information to dispatch the whole time. I mean, it was textbook perfect on what I would have had them do.
Now, on that, to interrupt you,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Did you have those conversations with your kids prior to, or did they just get used to hearing you talk about these? Do you think?
I think it's a little bit of both. We've had those conversations before. I don't remember. Typically with me, it's not like, okay, kids, we're going to sit down and we're going to talk about emergency management within the home. It's something happens and we're like, okay, well, hey, we had one instance where my son, when he was 10, passed out. So we had to call the squad. And I remember thinking at that time, honey, you stay with him. I'm going to run out and get the squad and direct him in, so we have little conversations like that here and there. But I think a lot of it is just, I talk about it around the home. I talk with them about that stuff. They're all smart kids. They've got a good head on their shoulders. Squad got there, had the tourniquet on, got me to the hospital, fingers dangling off at this point. Long story short, destroyed 80% of the bone in that finger, severed the flexor tendon. I've had 4 surgeries just on the hand. So that next day when I got back, because I ended up having to be taken down to Ohio Health in Columbus. Fantastic plastic surgeon, old school dude, very blunt, but in a polite way. Like, it wasn't like, oh, you're going to lose your finger, you're stupid. It was just like, yeah, okay, let's deal with this. Let's fix it. You might have a chance to keep it. The favorite thing he ever told me was, he goes, you're going to have people tell you, just go ahead and take the finger off. Go ahead and take the finger. Nobody will notice. He looked at me and he goes, they're all liars. First thing people are going to do when you walk in a room is go, oh my God, the guy's missing a finger. He's like, he goes, everybody will notice.
Yeah.
Good for him.
Yeah.
He said, the main takeaway is, he said, if we take your finger, I can't put it back.
Right.
He said, but if we leave it on, you can work with it and see how it does. And if it gets in the way, then we can take it off later. And I was like,
Interesting.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's a cool way to think about it.
Yeah, it's very good.
I've actually got a lot more movement in it than he thought. It is a little whopper jawed. I don't know. You can't really pick it up on the camera.
We can pick it up on the
Yeah.
camera.
You can. So that's,
we can definitely
I can't see it.
That's right.
that's the best fist I can make with my left hand.
Do you
The
do
finger will never go
with your
straight.
left hand? Are you a left hand?
No, I'm a righty, luckily,
Okay.
but I've never been very ambidextrous. Like, hey, sign your name with your left hand. I'm just
Right,
making
yeah,
it.
correct.
That probably doesn't mess with your shooting grip much, does it?
It actually, that was one of my biggest fears.
Yeah.
So I can say, I'm not saying where I work, but I will say the amount of support I got from my coworkers and the number of people that are still there. Yeah. The number of people that are still there that don't know this happened. Like,
Right.
you think of police departments, fire departments, we're a bunch of
Some guy at my
gossipy
work
little,
shot
gossipy
himself.
little bitches.
Dude,
Yeah.
everybody
Yeah.
would know.
Yeah.
we had that happen.
There are still guys
That's
that,
true.
Yeah. There's still guys that I'm
Glock
talking
struck.
to.
Yeah, the Glock struck
Yeah.
another one of our friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll be talking to people and I'm like, well, and I was off and why were you off? Well, my hand.
Yeah.
What'd you do to your hand? Well, okay, we'll tell this story again.
Yeah.
But I mean, I was in the hospital, hopped up on pain meds. My supervisor called me on something completely different. So mind you, when all this happened in December, I had my gallbladder taken out. I was in the hospital for 5 days because of that. Then this happened. About 3 weeks after this, I developed a massive hernia where I'd had the gallbladder. So I've had like 7 surgeries in the last.
When something happens to you, it happens 3 to 6 months at a time.
It does. It's like 5 years, nothing happens.
Yeah.
December and January, you're screwed.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had all this stuff going on. He calls. I just told him, he's like, hey, so that I'm like, stop. Here's what happened. He goes, okay, get better. I've got some phone calls to make. Don't worry. I said, okay, cool. Within an hour, I had a text message from our public safety director that said, hey, shit happens. You're going to be fine. We're here to help you. Let us know what you need. I'll talk to you in a few days.
Nice. Very nice.
Because my biggest fear at that point wasn't whether or not I'm losing my finger. My biggest fear at that point was whether or not I'm losing my job.
Right. Of course.
Because I could see some agencies being like, nope, you're gone. We don't want to deal with that.
You're only allowed to get DUIs here.
Exactly.
Jesus.
Now,
this is
on
way
a-
beyond drunk driving.
on a weird side note, and it's kind of made me think about it, is how many phone calls I got from other cops telling me, well, yeah, I had an ND like a couple years ago, but luckily it went into the wall. Luckily it went into the floor. Yeah. Now, is that me saying it because I feel better that, it happened to more guys, so I don't feel so bad about it happening to me? It happens.
Maybe a little.
No, a little bit. But what it made me realize too is nobody ever talks about it. So nobody ever thinks to themselves, it could happen to me, so I need to slow things down.
Well, I think you handled it awesomely because for me, I would think my initial thing would be like, I shouldn't even be around this shit anymore. Like, I'm done. You know, like a lot of people would have that attitude, but you're looking at it like, if you're teaching people how to shoot, like, trust me, it could happen to anybody. When I say it could happen to anybody, it could happen to anybody. It happened to me.
Yeah.
Like, oh shit, this dude's been around guns forever. Like, check your shit.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, so many guys, if it happens to them, want to keep it quiet and not tell anybody. And I'm not saying go out and brag about it, but at the same time, if it's just you're at the range and you see somebody maybe getting a little like spicy with how they're taking those rounds out, you know, doing all this. Hey, listen, here's what's happened to me. I got 4 or 5 buddies it's happened to. Don't do what I did. Don't get so comfortable with these things that, you know, this could happen to you. Right, slow it down. And that's what that told me is, you know, so many people are scared because it's like you hear about an ND and then everybody's making fun of them online.
Right.
It's like, okay, I didn't publish this online. I didn't talk about my hand surgeries.
It's real shit though. Like, yeah, it went into your finger. Not saying that's insignificant, but it went into your daughter's room too.
I don't know that I'll ever get my wife to go to the range with me again.
You know what I mean? That could have been.
Yeah,
it could have been really bad.
100% it could. 100%. My daughter, on the other hand, is like, Dad, why haven't we gone out shooting? Right. But I don't know that I'll ever be able to get and that's one of the things that really gets me is because this is what I enjoy. This is what I love doing. And I want her to come and enjoy it with me. But I don't know that I'm going to be able to get her out there. And because she associates, and I want to get her out there so she stops associating it this way, but she associates that noise with me getting shot. She didn't want to see her husband shot and bleeding and having all of that happen. Right. She didn't want to think about it went into my daughter's bedroom.
For sure.
You know?
But I think a really good takeaway from this, listening to you kind of talk about it, is like how your kids responded. Right. And I think it's super important. And this is something that I think that everybody, I don't care what you are, human beings should talk to their kids about how to respond to emergencies in the household.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we have a stove fire. How do we put that out? You know what I mean? Or grandpa falls and breaks his ankle. Hey, this is what I want you to like having those conversations so they don't freak out. So you're not trying to deal with whatever the incident is. And then your kids are screaming and the wife is screaming. You're like, you're not helping at all. Like,
there was
causing an issue. You know what I mean? I think it's way more important.
Yeah. Except for my wife and the initial Don, what's going on? What's going on?
Yeah, I understand.
Everybody was pretty calm. I mean, my kids were crying. They were worrying.
Yeah.
You know, I can't say enough about there are good and bad behind living in a small community. Living in a small community, everybody and their brother in town knew what happened. Like the next day I'm getting text messages from buddies. But at the same time, like some good friends of ours were on the way to a youth group retreat with kids from our church, and they drove by the house and they see 2 sheriff's deputies, a small town cop, and a squad and 3 other cars parked in my front yard. Called my pastor. My pastor was in the middle of a counseling meeting with somebody. And he was like, and all they said was, we don't know what's going on. We saw this at Don's house. We've got other people with us. We can't stop.
Right.
He said, okay, got done, looked at the people he was talking to and said, hey, I got to get up. I got to go. He got there just after the squad left, waited with all of my kids, because obviously Kara came with me, waited with all of my kids until my father-in-law got there.
That's awesome.
You know, and so.
But that's a good network to have too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you may
definitely
not get that in a bigger city or, you know what I mean? Those things may not happen. Yeah. You know, if you don't have those connections.
Yeah. So and then, you know, again, when I got back, the support I got from the department, I was very fortunate that they let me come back on a light duty status, which for me at the time was just office work. You know, I got back in late February for office work. Finally, it was July 3rd? I think it was July 3rd when we did the range, right? I had to come in and requalify.
Was it America's birthday or not?
Yeah. It was almost. It was birthday eve.
Yes.
What kind of treatment did you get from the squad?
Excellent treatment. So where I was at, and I'll put it out there, Jefferson Township, it's an almost all volunteer department. They pretty much knew who the house was because not only do I live right down the street from there, but I used to be a cop in that area. Had a couple guys that came straight from their house in their vehicle while they waited for somebody else to bring the squad. They were fantastic, helping me, helping my family, keeping calm, keeping everybody else calm. A couple of them stayed behind and helped my kids clean up because, like I said, there was blood everywhere down the hall.
You're not going to find that in most places.
Did they,
no. And a little bit of that probably was because they knew me and they knew who I was.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
You know, but they did I think they did a really good job. I mean, was there a ton for them to do? By the time they got there, that tourniquet was on. I mean, got it started. My wife finished cranking it.
Did they give you pain meds?
I'm trying to think. It's a little groggy at that moment. I think they did. I don't know what, but I think they gave me something.
Good.
And then of course, when
if they didn't, I'd be pissed at them. Be like, hey, break that Dilaudid out right now.
When I know it wasn't Dilaudid because I hate
give me some ketamine.
Probably fentanyl or something.
I've had ketamine when we were deployed. That's
really
good. Yeah.
They gave you ketamine when I broke
my wrist during the deployment.
That's awesome.
Well, we were in Afghanistan. They don't have quite the restrictions that we do here for painkillers.
We give ketamine.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Some people hate it. I gave it to a lady the other day.
So
it's synthetic PCP.
Yeah, it was weird. Now,
is PCP already synthetic?
Yeah, I thought it is. I thought it was in the Matrix. Like I could
kind of out of body.
Yeah, it was very out of body.
It's a disassociative.
Yeah, but I could do like the reason they gave it to me is I broke my wrist, but it was also dislocated, and they're like, we need to reset the dislocation.
Yeah, they use it for like conscious sedation and stuff like that.
So like I'm watching this doctor, and I'm like, look at that. That should probably hurt.
If they give you just the right dose, you'll be in the cool guy zone.
Yeah.
It was the cool guy zone.
I can see why people get addicted to it.
This lady the other day broke her hip, and I was giving her fentanyl for pain meds.
Yeah,
and it did not touch it. Like it would work for a couple minutes and wear right off.
Yeah.
And I dosed her twice with fentanyl, and she's like, it still hurts. And she was in a lot of pain. So I was like, I'm going to try some ketamine. I gave her just a sniff.
You don't have Dilaudid, do you?
I don't, unfortunately.
Love that.
I gave her just a sniff of ketamine, and she was like, my hip doesn't hurt anymore, but I do not like this.
Yeah. I hate Dilaudid. Dilaudid gives me the nastiest metallic taste in my mouth. Like I will sit there and
that's cool chug
I'll chug whatever you put in front of me to try and get that taste out of my mouth. Because they gave me Dilaudid when I had my gallbladder taken out. Okay. I was on so many pain meds for like December and January. It's ridiculous.
I typically like giving Dilaudid because I think it lasts for a while.
You know what?
It did the job.
I'm just gonna pause right here. We're talking about drugs again, the last little bit of the podcast. So we're going to do final thoughts.
Yes.
And then we can talk about the last time.
Like I said, we were talking about legalization. Yeah. So kind of circling all the way back, everybody I've dealt with throughout this has been fantastic. Work got me back in as quick as they could, so I wasn't burning through sick leave like crazy. And they were, I mean, I was not allowed to carry a firearm from basically December when I had my gallbladder taken out until July 3rd. And that's weird.
I bet that's weird.
when you carry a firearm every day, whether it's appendix, strong side, whatever, to get up and not have that be part of your regimen, you look at the world differently. When you're out walking around, when you're driving, when you're going to businesses, you're driving around downtown Columbus and you're like, oh, okay. It definitely changed things up and how I was handling a lot of that. But again, every agency is going to have their issues. They're going to have their problems. Yeah. But the way everybody from the director, the chief, I about once a month, I'd get a text message or an email from our former chief, retired now, that would just straight up be like, hey, how you doing? Just checking up on you. How's your wife doing? I hardly tell anybody this. Before that happened, when I had my gallbladder out, I was supposed to go to a training in Mansfield. And one of our lieutenants was also attending that training in Mansfield and was like, hey, you're not at the training. Where are you? And I'm like, I just had my gallbladder taken out yesterday. I'll be in the hospital for another 3 or 4 days. Oh, and she was like, that's too bad. 3:00 that afternoon when that class was out, she came and sat at the hospital and talked with me and my wife for almost an hour. And you know who I'm talking about. She does a fantastic job taking care of her guys. And, my wife today is just like, that meant the world to her. I never got that at my other 2 agencies. And that was there are agencies where I lived. But again, kind of circling back to, it was horrible. It happened. daily pain in my hand. That's probably never going to go away. I constantly, like every time I stop at a stoplight, I stretch it, because if I go a couple days without stretching it, it gets real stiff and I can't use it as well anymore. I could have multiple surgeries down the road to try and reconnect the flexor tendon, but it's a minimum 6-month recoupment time from that. And right now I can go back to work. So going back to the firearms thing, it didn't hinder me one bit.
No.
One of the things you have to do with the minimum qual is you have to do a weak hand shoot.
Yeah.
I did fine with the weak hand. Qualified with my full size and the little Glock 43.
Yeah, you still got up here and you got pinky pressure.
Oh, and circling back to why the round stayed in. So there are a couple issues with the 43X. I will say with mine, because there's not a lot of definitive out there, but when you put the Loctite in, if you leave the slide completely assembled, the Loctite gets down on the extractor spring, and it caused mine to stay compressed. I had an actual Glock armor, take it apart, and he was like, dude, that spring was toast. He's like, I had an extra, so I put the extra on. I cleaned it all up. You're good. But he said, if they don't tell people to do that, it's going to happen to more than one person. Mm-hmm. So literally what happened was the extractor didn't work. And so the 4 or 5 times I racked that slide back, it just stayed in the chamber. So again, my mistake without visually and physically checking it. Because again, how many times do we do the 4 or 5 and we see the round fly out and yay, we're good to go. There was that issue, and the 43X, if you get a sight that says it's made for it and has Glock screws, the screws are a smidge too long. They need shaved down. That was the other issue. And he feels that's what made it so the Loctite pushed down as far as it did, is the screw being a little too long. Mm. So he fixed all that. I don't have the side note. The sight is screwed up anyways. I still haven't sent that back to SIG, but yeah. Gun shoots fine. It's the one I used out on the range we had that day. I put probably another 500 rounds through it. But yeah, it sucks. It happened in the past. Ignoring it's not going to help anybody, including myself.
But everybody's alive, and you're still doing your thing. So
yeah, everybody's doing good. Still got my job. Still go out and shoot. Yeah. Wanting to go out and shoot more, but with all my kids' schedules and my work schedule and the wife's, it's
life happens.
Redonkulous. So
we'll get back.
Yeah, good times.
Well, glad you're okay, man.
Yeah, story.
Thanks, Tim.
And as a sidebar, I had not heard the whole story.
I worked
it. No, I had. Okay. I mean, we, obviously same agency, and I had not heard the whole story. So thanks for sharing.
And I like that part. Not so much that guys weren't like, oh, did this happen to Don? But at the same time, I think a lot of it was there were a lot of guys that knew about it, and they were just like, this isn't my thing to tell. Mm-hmm. There's no good's going to come of me telling them about this having happened. Right. Yeah. So yeah, good times.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Dustin, you got anything you want to shout out before we wrap it up?
No, man. I mean, we talked about the training side of things and retirement. I think that was good.
Do you have a website for the business yet?
It's actually almost done. So it's going to be, but it'll be MoweryTacticalConcepts.com.
Okay.
So
cool.
That'll be up and running.
Cool.
It has an email attached to it that I think there's go to the wife, and she's the boss on all that. So, but yeah, if anybody's looking to host, reach out. Or hit me up on IG or whatever, and we can kind of get connected. Trying to do some things down south.
What's your IG handle?
Yeah.
Dustin Mowery 337.
Nice and easy. I'll link it.
Yep. Yeah. Super easy. So, reach out. I'm trying to go out west. I maybe got a couple things out in Washington State this year, and then down south. So
nice.
Yeah. So it'll be good. It'll be a good time. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you guys having me come in again.
Thanks for coming back.
Up. Yeah, for sure.
Maybe we'll do it
more here than
bi-yearly instead of yearly.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that'd be great.
Make it annually.
Yeah. I'm retired now, so it's like, what do you want to do?
Let's take it on the road.
Yes, yeah, man, absolutely. Yeah,
Timothy, you got anything, brother?
No, Don, thanks for sharing your story.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Dustin, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Good luck to you in retirement.
Thank you. It's an amazing feeling. I highly suggest it to everybody.
I can't wait.
Yes.
30 more years.
Yeah.
Jared?
The left lane's for crime. All right.
There you go.
See you, everybody.
Later.
America.